Hey everyone, this is Mike from Comic Book Trove, back today with another video, and as I'm sure you'll have seen from the title of this one, today I'm going to be taking a look at the top 10 DC Deluxe Editions in my collection. Now, I have previously taken a look at the top 10 DC Omnibuses, which I own. Feel free to go and check that video out, but today I'm focusing on the Deluxe Editions, which for anybody who is not sure, the Deluxe Editions are DC's other oversized hardcover format, so they have the same book dimensions as an omnibus. They're just thinner, they collect less material, but by no means are they any less cool. And today I want to take a look at the top 10, as I say, which I own in no particular order. We're going to get started right here with this one, Identity Crisis. This is a book I've actually not looked at individually on the channel yet. I've not done a focused review on this one. So I won't do that here, nor will I do it with the other books. I have covered most of these, this one being an exception. But I'm going to give a bit of an overview of each of them, show them off a little bit, and just, yeah, kind of run through why I like them all as much as I do. This series, well, it was an event really from the kind of mid-2000s, I think from 2004 into 2005. It's, for the most part, kind of a Justice League story. It's a DC-wide story, involves a lot of characters. This particular deluxe edition, I think it is out of print now because this was a 10th anniversary edition of the story. And this came out, I think, in about 2014, so quite an old release now. As we flick through the book, I'll just give a spoiler warning for anything that might show off in any of these books that you don't want to see, but this was written by Brad Meltzer with art by Rags Morales. I think that Meltzer did a good job writing this. Overall, it's basically a mystery story. There is a character who dies quite tragically in here. It kind of gets a lot of the DC superheroes in a bit of a frenzy and a panic because they start to worry about their own loved ones and friends. They don't quite know who killed this person or how they pulled it off, and the whole story for the most part is a pretty large investigation by this main cast of characters, and, you know, the Justice League characters amongst others, trying to get to the bottom of it. But this is a bit of a controversial story. It deals with some, let's say, very mature themes, and it's not a book that I think everybody holds in particularly high regard, but I quite enjoyed going through the book. You know, I've read it a few times over the years, and I think it is a good story that's well written. It is a dark story, though, definitely one to avoid if you are not looking for something that's quite, honestly, quite depressing and grim. This is not a story that's going to pick you up. Definitely not a happy story in any way. It's got some real sad moments in here. Yeah, but overall, it is a standout story for me. I just think that it's a very memorable one. It's of all the DC comics I've read, this is something that always sticks in my mind. It was a powerful story, quite an emotional story, to be honest. As we look through the next one then, this is going to be sticking with Brad Meltzer. Again, wrote this one. He wrote the Identity Crisis a couple of years after that story. He then started writing a new ongoing Justice League series. This book came out, I want to say, a couple of years ago now. It's one that's really cool. It's just quite an easy Justice League read. It features some really nice artwork as well by Ed Benes. I just think, yeah, the artwork is kind of particularly in here. A lot of it is a real high point for this particular book. But this was a really cool story, quite a cool take on the Justice League. This followed on from Infinite Crisis, a story which had led to some great rifts appearing between those characters. A lot of mistrust was sown between the main trinity of heroes, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Kind of tore the Justice League apart, really. And this series is them trying to come back together, put their differences aside, and create a new Justice League because, you know, despite their own disagreements, despite their misgivings, whatever it might be, the world still needs heroes. There are still threats that the Justice League can deal with, and they still ultimately think they can do some good. So they put together a new team, and yeah, like I say, it's a pretty fun story. A large cast of characters, some really exceptional artwork at times in here, and all in all, a book that, whilst it's maybe not one of the best ever runs, it's certainly something that I think you can have a good time reading. It's a bit of a shame that there doesn't seem to be any plan, as far as I'm aware, for DC to release any more of this series. You know, this is not a volume 1, it's literally just Justice League of America by Brad Meltzer. So this is his full run writing it, which is about 11 issues. But it would have been nice to see more oversized collections of the rest of that series, because I thought that was quite a fun one. If we move on to the next book, this is one that I really do love. We're looking at Promethea here, book 1 specifically, but to be honest, putting this on the list for me is representative of all 3 books, all 3 volumes of the Promethea Deluxe Edition series. These books are just stunning, really nice design. I've showed them off in a video talking about them at some length, but I really like the way that these look. They're really nice. This kind of matte feel with some of the design being in this kind of glossy finish to make it stand out. Really nice. And the artwork in here by J.H. Williams III is some of the very best I think there's ever been. The story written obviously by Alan Moore, who is, you know, well, he's Alan Moore, writes some amazing stuff. And whilst, you know, I'll say that this is not my favourite of his works, it is certainly a story that is very interesting, very gripping. I think you probably do have to be a little bit open-minded to read it, because it's really quite philosophical, quite conceptual, deals with some really interesting kind of ideas relating to magic and spirituality. It's not exactly a straightforward story, but I don't think you should be put off by that. I don't think it's overly complicated. It certainly wasn't to me, and I had no familiarity with most of the ideas that get dealt with in here prior to reading it, and I did okay. So yeah, I do think this is something well worth checking out. I believe these Promethea books are still available as well, and it's a great way to collect this series in my opinion. So yeah, another strong one there, definitely. Moving on, there is going to be a bit of a theme here, I kind of realise, with Alan Moore stories. This is V for Vendetta, the 30th anniversary deluxe edition. One thing that DC like to do quite often with their deluxe editions is name them after specific anniversaries. The Promethea one, that was the 20th anniversary, for example. But yeah, so another story by Alan Moore, illustrated this time round by David Lloyd. I did review this one not too long ago actually on the channel, doing an individual book review on here, where I spoke about how, well, to keep it relatively brief, the artwork is not exactly some of my favourite, but it's very well suited to this story. It's very dark, gritty. This is not, again, this is not a very light-hearted story. It deals with a dystopian future where a totalitarian regime has taken over Great Britain, and it's kind of dealing with the character of V, the classic guy in the Guy Fawkes mask, trying to start a revolution and bring down the evil regime. It's a very cool story. It's quite a classic one, really. I think a lot of people know about this, even if you haven't actually read it. You know, the film that came out quite a while ago now, but I think that was pretty popular. Yeah, it's a cool book. Another good one to get. It's really nicely presented in this particular deluxe edition. I think it's a very nice looking book, and another one I'd recommend, as I would with everything on this list, to be honest. Let's jump over to the world of Batman now, and one of the most popular and famous Batman stories there's ever been, plus its sequel. Okay, so this is the Batman the Dark Knight Saga by Frank Miller. It collects basically the Dark Knight Returns and the Dark Knight Strikes Again. It doesn't collect the third story, Dark Knight 3, because I think when this was published, again, this is another quite old deluxe edition. I don't think that story had actually come out when this was printed. But the main reason I'm obviously focusing on this book is for Dark Knight Returns. That story is just one of the all-time famous comic books, graphic novels, whatever you want to call it. It's one that I don't know what more I could really say about it. Again, I have reviewed it before. I said the same thing in the review. But it's the story of a middle-aged Batman who's been out of action for about 10 years. Things in Gotham get worse and worse to a point where he kind of says enough is enough. And he comes back and starts being Batman again and dealing with the situation. It's a really good Batman story. You know, I don't know if I think it's the very best Batman story, but it's certainly pretty amazing. It's got some great moments in here. The artwork, I think, is, for the most part, really good, by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. They're a good pair, obviously worked together on Daredevil as well. And it's a story that makes great use of these kind of small, almost claustrophobic panels throughout a lot of the storytelling, and then opens up and lets the artwork breathe a little bit when you get to more dramatic, big moments in the story. The follow-up story is also in here. We'll see pages from that here as well. Might as well show them off. It's a far inferior story. I think pretty much everybody would agree with that. Not as much, not really deserving as much of a read as the first story. I would say you can definitely read Dark Knight Returns and never really bother with this, but there is fun to be had with it, I'll say that. It's a story that if you're going with low expectations of this sequel, I don't think it will really let you down. It's very kind of weird. Like I say, just nowhere near on the same quality as the original story, but it's okay. And this is a good collection to have Dark Knight Returns in anyway, because of it being in that oversized format. I know that there is an absolute edition as well. In fact, there is for most of these books, I believe. But I'm just not an absolute collector myself, so I go for these deluxe editions. Let's take a look at All-Star Superman then, by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. Now this is probably, I reviewed this a while ago on the channel now. I've read it since I actually did that review. And in that review I talked about how much I enjoyed it. I have since reread it and liked it even more than I did the first time. This is, I think it's my favourite Superman story. I think I can safely say that at this stage. It's a really great book. Beautifully written at times, some great artwork as well. Basically featuring a Superman who is aware of his own mortality. It becomes apparent that he is slowly dying, and he sets about doing as much good as he can in his final days to try and leave people and, you know, to leave humanity and the world as a large in as good a place as he can do for when he's gone. And it's got some really sweet moments, some beautiful stuff in here, very cool, and it just really captures, for the most part, I think, what Superman is as a character and what makes him the ultimate superhero. I don't think like every story in here, because it kind of deals with a few different kind of mini stories, mini arcs. I don't think everyone is amazing. Like there's this one with Bizarro. I think that might be the weakest one, but you know what? All in all, it's really cool, and I think that it is my favourite work by Grant Morrison as well. Yeah, a very good book, a very good Superman story. Certainly one that I'd say if you're looking to read some Superman comics and you've not checked this one out, definitely give it a try, whether it be in this deluxe edition or another format. I'm sure I can get it in trade paperback format, for example. Let us jump back over to Batman for a minute, and back to Frank Miller's Batman as well, because we're looking here at Batman Year 1. So this is Frank Miller's take on an updated origin story that he did for Batman in the 80s, following on from Crisis on Infinite Earth, when DC's continuity largely rebooted for the first time. In here we see the artwork, not of Frank Miller, but of David Mazzucchelli. And I think that, again, they're another great pairing. You know, the two of them work well together. It's artwork that complements the storytelling style, the tone of the story. And this is, like I say, it's a Batman origin. So it's Bruce Wayne coming to Gotham and starting on his journey to becoming Batman. And at the same time, we follow Commissioner Gordon through here. Well, he's not Commissioner Gordon at this point, but he's newly joining the, I think he's a lieutenant in the Gotham City Police Department. And we see how he kind of deals with the corruption that is quite rife within the Gotham police. And at the same time, obviously, Batman is emerging onto the scene. And by the end of the story, we see the two of them kind of forge their alliance for the first time, Gordon and Batman. And it's just a very memorable story. I do think it's the definitive Batman origin story. I think to this day it holds up for the most part really well. Cool glossy page, not glossy pages, I mean matte pages in the this particular deluxe edition as well. I believe that is something that David Mazzucchelli has always specifically requested, that collections of this book print it on matte paper to kind of better complement the artwork. If I'm not mistaken, maybe misremembering that, but I'm sure that's the case. But as I say, another great book. And there is another Batman story here. Another Batman Deluxe Edition. This time it is Batman Hush. It's another one of DC's anniversary editions. This was the 15th anniversary edition of Hush. So a few years old now. I think they've since reprinted it again, but not as an oversized hardcover. They did I think a standard size hardcover book not too long ago, collecting Hush. And I believe as well there is going to be an omnibus as well, collecting not only all the material in here, but then various Hush related stories that take place after this, because this is the first Hush story, okay, written by Jeff Loeb, artwork by Jim Lee, of course. And this is a story that's kind of in the same sort of vein as Jeff Loeb's classic work, The Long Halloween, whereby we've got basically a long ongoing mystery story running through most of this book, where there's some new villain on the scene, someone targeting Batman, and he's trying to figure out who it is and what their motive is, etc. And in the meantime, a lot of the larger cast of Batman's rogues gallery all turn up. So we see characters like Poison Ivy, the Joker, Harley Quinn, Killer Croc, yeah, a few others I'm sure. There's an appearance by Superman in here, which is very cool. And obviously the Jim Lee artwork is, for the most part, really nice. And yeah, as somebody who's pretty much always been a fan of Jim Lee's work in most of the things he's done, I can say that this is no exception to that. Some really beautiful artwork in here. Some of the pages are kind of really seared into my mind. There's some classic, iconic bits of artwork in this book. And it's a fun story. You know, I think it doesn't live up to the quality of Long Halloween, which I've mentioned is kind of, seems like it's kind of an inspiration for this, really, as this is almost a spiritual sequel to it, sort of. I don't think it's as good as that, but it is a fun story, and you know, for the purposes as well of having a good amount of Jim Lee artwork here, if you're a Jim Lee fan, certainly a good book to have in an oversized format. So all in all, again, another great DC Deluxe edition. Let's take a look at this book then. Another one that I somehow have not actually reviewed yet. I've not done an individual review on this one, but this is Watchmen, the Deluxe Edition. I think this is actually the first ever Deluxe Edition collection of Watchmen. Obviously it's been in probably every other format. I know there's an absolute of it. It's probably been in trade paperbacks continuously since it was originally published. Really cool book, this one though. So it's another one with a matte dust jacket and a very kind of bright yellow theme going on. It's yeah, this is a really good collection. So Watchmen, again written by Alan Moore, and this one where I mentioned that you know, Promethea and V for Vendetta, probably not my favourite stories. Well, that's because I'd have to go with this one, as I'm sure plenty of other people do. This is just one of, if not arguably, the very best comic book / graphic novel that there's ever been. It would be hard to kind of pick out something that's better than it. Yeah, it's a really good story. It's a book that played a significant role in, you know, making comics more mature and making people realise that comic books can be kind of works of literature in their own right. You know, this is a book that has a lot of respect, and it's a great story. You know, that's the thing. You know, it's not just a case of it's a well-regarded book. It's also genuinely really cool. It's a great story. It's a lot of dark material in here, though. Definitely a mature story. Not something for everybody, you know, but it's well worth reading, I think, if you have somehow got into comic book collecting but not managed to read Watchmen at any point. I guess I'll have to do a full review on it at some point and do a proper discussion, because I'm skimming over it completely here, not really doing it any kind of justice. But yeah, this is a deluxe edition that I think is a great way to have this book. So yeah, it's going to be on the list. And lastly then, we've got Batman the Long Halloween, which I've already managed to mention because we looked at Hush, which I say was kind of a spiritual successor to this one, thematically very similar. Well, this is the original story of that style. This is Batman the Long Halloween, the Deluxe Edition, which came out, again, a couple of years ago, I think, at this point, but written by Jeff Loeb, artwork by the late Tim Sale. And this is probably my favourite Batman story. You know, I've shown this book off a few times on the channel already, both this Deluxe Edition specifically and in the Omnibus collection. This is amazing. Really love this story. And, you know, got to give a special mention as well to the other books from Loeb and Sale that also received this Deluxe Edition treatment. So as well as this one, there's its sequel, Dark Victory. There's the kind of tie-in series, Catwoman When in Rome, and the sort of prequel, but not really a prequel, Haunted Knights. All those books have got a deluxe edition that match the style of this one. So there's a set of them, all four of them really good. But I picked this one because this is obviously the main meat and bones of the story. It all kind of centers around this. Yeah, it's just a great mystery story again. Serial killer on the loose. Features Batman fairly early in his career, and he's trying to figure out who this serial killer is. And along the way, quite a few red herrings and twists and turns. Great appearances by a lot of memorable Batman villains as well. And all in all, this is just a very enjoyable thing to read through. I think it's a great story. Focuses a lot on the organised crime, the kind of seedy underbelly of Gotham. Provided a bit of inspiration for the Dark Knight film and the Christopher Nolan trilogy. So, you know, plenty of reasons to check this book out if you haven't done so. And as I say, for what it's worth, I do think this one remains my favourite Batman story. Now, that's all 10, but I decided that I wanted to give a couple of other honourable mentions before I kind of call it quits. So I wanted to have a look briefly at The Killing Joke as well. This is another classic Alan Moore story, a classic Batman story. Another book that I reviewed not too long ago, and it's something that I think is a good way to get this book. It didn't make my list because, frankly, the other Batman stories that were on here I prefer a little bit more, but this is still a classic story, a great Joker origin story, something well worth reading. And just one more honourable mention, I wanted to just show quickly the Crisis on Infinite Earths Deluxe Edition as well. This was the 35th anniversary. I told you they do like to do these anniversary editions. But this one is obviously a very classic, famous DC event. It's the original huge crossover, the first time they did a line-wide reboot as a result of what happens in here. Featuring the writing of Marv Wolfman. The highlight, though, being the artwork of George Perez. Again, though, the reason it didn't make my main list, simply because despite the fact there is a lot of significance to this story and a lot of great artwork from Perez, the story is just quite dense, and I found it to be quite inaccessible, quite difficult to actually read it and enjoy it. So as much as I kind of respect and appreciate the significance of this, it's just not as enjoyable a read for me personally as the other books were that I put on the proper list itself. So whilst it is worth checking out, I think, and it is a good deluxe edition, it's just not one of my very favourite ones. But that is going to be that now, guys. Thanks as always for watching. I hope it was quite entertaining or insightful in some way, and I'll be back again soon to discuss something else.